Uncharted 3, and we'll talk to you a little bit today about Uncharted and what we're doing, and we're going to show you some cool footage. Just a little bit. I'll get to that quickly, I promise. Okay, so Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. So when we start off making these games, we usually try to find a historical quote to sort of encapsulate what the experience is going to be like for the player. And so when Amy Hennig, our creative director, started looking through the story stuff, she found T. Lawrence as being sort of this guy that we were going to latch onto. And so he actually had this quote: "The dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for them to act their dreams with open eyes to make it possible." And this we sort of latched onto because it's about a person who goes out and imposes their will upon the world, and those people being very, very dangerous. And that applies to both Drake and to the villains that he's fighting in this game. So it's sort of the thing we started with, and it's actually the quote that starts the game out. So to start off with Uncharted 3 single player. So we started off with the success of Uncharted 2, and realizing that we had a lot of big shoes to fill, and that we internally had put a lot of pressure on ourselves to try and make a game that was at least on par, if not better, than Uncharted 2. And after all the critical success, that was very heavy on our minds. And so we went to the idea of having. It's always been a touchstone of Uncharted is it's a blockbuster movie that you can play, right? That's sort of where the design all came from. And so this game is no exception. And so what does that mean? It means that we had to start over again in terms of a lot of our tech, like building a brand new sand tech, brand new water tech, a brand new story, brand new villain, all these things to make the game even more interesting. And so one of the things we really wanted to do this game was also have a deeper connection and understanding of our characters. And so that meant having even more scenes with somebody like Sullivan or Chloe or Elena that sort of brings out different aspects of Drake's personality and showing those off even more to the player. And then we also had, of course, as I said, next generation tech concerns. So how can we make the game look even better? How can we get better animations in it? How can we do all the things we want to do that we weren't able to in Uncharted 2? And then, of course, expanded gameplay choices. How can we allow the player to play the game in even more unique and interesting ways? So the story this time is focused on Drake and Sullivan, and it's the Drake and Sully show, basically. It's about their relationship to each other, and we call it a bromance at the office. The idea that these two guys have been together for a long time and trying to figure out sort of the best way to show off the unique sides of their personalities and really explain why these guys are the way they are. And going into that, Sullivan is sort of a savior and a corrupter for Drake. So he's always been there, had Drake's back, bailed him out of bad scenarios. But at the same time, he's kind of a snaky guy. He's a con man in some sense. And so is that somebody Drake wants to become or not? And is it some part of his life? Is he gonna be that in 20 years? That's the interesting question. And so then another thing we focused on with the game is how do relationships change with age? So Sullivan is getting older. It's harder for him to go on these adventures with Drake. And what does that mean? And what does that mean for Drake? And what does that mean for Sullivan? And it's one of the things we explored with this game. And also Sullivan is a mirror for Drake. And it's Drake's looking at somebody that he could become if he's not careful, and is that something he wants or not? And then claiming an identity is another huge piece of the story, and it all ties in with Sir Francis Drake's ring, which was big in Uncharted Drake's fortune. And what does it mean to claim an identity for yourself, and what does it mean to be the person you want to be? And so all of these things got tied into the story of this game. New villains this time. So we always need new villains because we keep killing the old ones off. And so one of the important things was doing a different type of villain. And in the last two games, you've sort of had these very gun-heavy. You had a warlord and a gun runner in the first game, a warlord in the second game, a gun runner in the first game. And how could we make a new type of villain that wasn't that? And so making sure that we had Catherine Marlowe and Talbot being our two touchstones here, and they are very secretive. They run a secret society. They're behind the scenes. They pull the strings of power. They get inside your head and they mess with you. They're all about sort of being in the background. And so it's a totally different type of enemy that we decided to put in. They're insidious. They're clever. They're going to twist the knife whenever you least expect it. And they also run a secret society and all the things that means. They're tied up in this sort of. There was a society around Queen Elizabeth. She had tons of spies, and she was basically a spy master. She had Walshingham, who was her spy master, and these people are the inheritors of that ancient sort of tradition, and so they're very, very secretive. And then they're an indirect enemy. They're not going to be up in your face. They're not an army. They're more secretive than that. And then technology-wise, what did we do? We went to the desert this time, and so we had to basically completely change. We were like, oh, we'll just make the snow into sand from Uncharted 2. It'd be great. And it didn't work like that. We actually had to go in and completely revamp everything to make the sand be what we wanted to be, to make it really, really awesome. We also didn't want to just do that. We wanted to have other locations. So water. was another big thing for us. And so going back to Uncharted 1, we had a ton of cool water tech, and then we basically blew it out. We made a huge ocean that actually dynamically drives a cruise ship. We have sloshing water inside of the cruise ship pool. All these different cool water things we were able to do in this game that we weren't before. And then we hugely expanded the melee and brawling system in this game. We basically ripped out everything we did in Uncharted 1 and 2 and started over again to give you the ability to really hand-to-hand fight some guys. So you can hit multiple targets, you can use improvised weapons. It's all this very visceral feel of actually getting in a melee fight, which is always something we wanted to do in Uncharted, we just never had time to. And in this game, we put in a fully functional system. Streaming animation system. This is how we get all the really cool looking stuff, even better than we did last game, where Drake actually has all these different move sets depending on what he's doing and where. So if he's just running around, he looks kind of casual, whereas if he's in combat, he looks super intense, whereas if he's kind of like exploring, he has a totally different look. He can even do things like he can reach out and touch walls and stuff as he passes by them. He'll reach out, put his hands up, he runs directly into a wall. All these cool things that we were able to do this game that we weren't before. New weapon systems, so all of the guns were completely rewritten this game to make them feel much more natural. They're all the cameras were all changed to make them feel like they were a more progressive gun system and make it feel like people understood why they were missing and why they were hitting their targets. And then industry-leading performance capture, just